All right, so this is my 20-gallon tank. It is a 20-gallon long. So it's about, I think it's just under 3 foot long. And it holds 20 gallons, obviously. And this is a tank that I recently rescaped. I rescaped it a few months ago. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and watch it. I believe in very simple, easy to do scapes. Even though this has a lot going on, it was very simple. It's only 3 variations of plants. I have Java moss, crypt, and then Java fern, and that's essentially it. Well, actually I lied. I do have some anubias on either side. I kind of picked those up after the fact. But the less variations of plants you have, the easier it is to aquascape. But what I have in here are a few platies. I think I have 6 or 7 platies swimming around. These are actually 4th generation platies. I grew these in my outdoor mini pond. So if you guys haven't seen that video where I took down the mini pond, watch that one as well. But that's an easy way to really do hands-off fish breeding. Is to have like an outdoor mini pond that you get with like a 20-gallon planter pot, right? But I have about 5 or 6 of those. This 20-gallon tank is just temporary for the platies. They will be moved to the 75-gallon once they get a little bit bigger. But right now they're kind of small. I don't want them to get eaten by the larger fish that's in the 75-gallon now. But really great fish, really great at maintaining their tank. You'll see them pretty regularly picking off the glass or the rock or the driftwood or various plants. They kind of pick off all the stuff and algae even to kind of keep things clean. That's just what they do. But definitely a really colorful fish, right? Really bright orange. So definitely adding a pop of color. But the other fish that you may see in here are the rummy-nosed tetras. They just swam back here. Now, I only have 3 of those. Now, the goal for this tank is to have a huge school of rummy-nosed tetras. When I went to the local fish store, I only got like 3 or 4, and I keep going back, and they either don't sell them or they are out of stock. So I had to buy some online. Now I have bought fish online before, but I haven't bought it from this particular vendor. I bought from another company a while ago, and they did a good job, but they didn't sell rummy-nosed tetras. For whatever reason, I'm having a difficult time finding them. But I did find them online, but from a new vendor, a new company. And they should be here in about a week. I think they're going to ship it out in a couple days, and I have 1-day shipping for them to get here stress-free, and hopefully they're all a-okay. So once I do get the other, I think I get like 7 more rummy-nosed tetras, so I should have a group about 10 or 11 swimming around here. But once they get here, I'll give an update to that video, and I'll do a review on buying fish online if you guys are interested in buying fish online. If you thought about it but you weren't sure if it's worth it, I'll make sure to do a review. But rummy nose tetras are really cool fish. They are a really good schooling fish. And so, as you can see, there's just 3 of them right now, and they're already schooling together. Like they just stay together most of the time. Now, if you guys are interested in getting some rummy nose tetras, I would advise that you get a larger group. Like I'm gonna get, there should be about 10 or 11 of them here in a few days. And the other thing is, I would call these an intermediate fish. And the reason why is they're very peaceful, they're not aggressive, they go great in a community tank, but they are sensitive to changes in water chemistry, right? So they can be kept in a broad range of pH and water hardness and whatnot, just like most of the other tropical community fish. But they don't handle changes in water as well as some of your beginner fish, like your platies or your guppies or your mollies. So if you're gonna get rummy nose tetras, just be advised, just take that into account, that if you're gonna do water changes, and I do recommend water changes with these type of fish, they like really clean water. But whenever you do water changes, make sure it's a small amount, right? Just replace maybe about 10 to 15% whenever you do a water change, and that way it will help minimize the change in water chemistry that can really stress it out and be fatal for these little guys. So I would say just be advised of that. Have really good filtration. I have essentially 3 filters going on up here. This is a 20 gallon. I have a Marina Slim filter rated for a 20, and I have another Marina Slim filter rated for a 20. Both hang on the back filters, and then I have a UV sterilizer internal filter right there. And all of these are equipped with the sponge filters, crushed coral, and the Bio Max rings. And the pre-filter sponge as well at the bottom of each of these filter intakes, just to maximize where the beneficial bacteria can grow, so we can keep the fish healthy, even if I do clean my filters in the tap water. So I'm going to do a maintenance video here in a little bit later on. But if you guys been scared about washing your filters in tap water, I'm gonna show you that's how I clean my filters. Pretty controversial, but I'll dive more into that on a different video. But rummy nose tetras have some really good filtration, do water changes, but minimize the amount, or I guess how much of the water you take out, just so it doesn't stress them out too much, right? The other fish I have in here are the pygmy cories. So they're little bitty cories. I only got a couple of them. And this was another fish that I wanted a large school of, but I wasn't able to find them at my local fish store. So in a couple days, including with the shipment of the other rummy nose tetras, is more pygmy cory cats. So those pygmy cories, I think I'm getting 5 plus the 2 that I have. So there'll be 7 in total, just kind of schooling around. They're just like normal cories. They look like a peppered cory, but they're much smaller in size. And I'm really going for smaller fish, like even the platies. Once they're full grown, they're going to be too big. Not that they're too big for the tank, but they're going to be too big scale-wise for the scape. So I want the scape to look like a true island, which means I need smaller fish. Otherwise, if the fish are too big, it'll just throw off the scale and it wouldn't look right for this particular scape, right? Not for the tank as a whole. But that's why I'm getting smaller fish like the rummy nose tetras and the pygmy cories. they're gonna do a great job at cleaning the bottom of the tank. Now, one thing I noticed is that these rummy-nosed tetras, they're gonna eat the food as soon as it comes, and they're lightning fast. And you can see their little bellies like puff up whenever they eat because they just gouge themselves. So what I would advise, if you have rummy-nosed tetras and you want to get some cory cats, make sure you feed them their own food as well. I have some sinking pellets specifically for bottom feeders, so the cory cats still get some good food, even though these rummy-nosed tetras are gonna eat it as soon as I drop it in the water here. But the pygmy cories, they are definitely beginner fish. They're loaded with personality. They're gonna clean the bottom of the floor, and they're a very peaceful fish. So I definitely highly recommend the pygmy cories. The other fish that I have in here, and they normally only come out at night, and if I'm lucky, they come out at feeding time every now and then, just poke their head out. So I'm gonna have to get some montages of these guys, but the cooey loaches, I got a handful of cooey loaches in here. They normally hide underneath this area between these two rocks and behind this Java moss. But I got a few cute cooey loaches hanging out, and they're just an additional cleanup crew for me, and they're just so cool to look at. I wish they came out more, but I think that's part of what makes them so, I guess, so attractive, is they're like a different fish. They look like a baby eel is what they look like. And anytime they do come out, it's like a treasure. It's like, okay, we gotta go take a look at the tank because the cooey loaches are finally coming out. But they're a pretty interesting fish. So the way they eat, I don't know if you ever get them and you watch them eat, you'll kind of see it. But what they do is they just eat the substrate, sand and all, and that's why if you're gonna have cooey loaches, I recommend to have sand. They're gonna, because they like sifting through it and getting everything. But they're just gonna take a mouthful of sand of where they think food is, and then they filter everything that's not sand out through their gills, and anything that's food stays in their mouths and they eat it. So it's pretty interesting. So they're gonna kind of turn over that very top layer of the substrate, help keeping it clean. And here's a little pygmy cory right here. He came out. So just a tiny little guy. And it's a shame. There's only two of them right now, but in like a couple days, I think Tuesday is when, and I think it's Sunday right now. Tuesday is when the other load of cory cats are going to be here, the pygmy cories. So they're going to have loads of friends to swim around with. But the cooey loaches, these I would say they're in between a beginner fish and an intermediate fish, right? They are sensitive to water changes, and I would also say they're sensitive to some medication, and to maybe some fertilizers, if you do fertilizers as well. And the reason why that is because the cooey loaches are actually, well, they say they're a scaleless fish, meaning they don't have scales like most fish, and there's conflicting evidence on if they are scaleless or if their scales are just a little bit different and very tiny. But either way, their bodies are just prone to infection more and prone to, I guess, being impacted by medications or fertilizer a little bit more than your other fish. So if you're gonna get those type of fish, the cooey loaches, just keep that in mind. Again, you want to do smaller water changes, and maybe do half doses of meds when you have to do meds, right? The other fish that I have in here are the ottos. I only have two ottos. So those guys like to be in the school as well. But I only have two of them, and they do a great job at cleaning all the algae. They eat the algae off this rock and off the glass. And now whenever I'm cleaning my tank, I normally scrub the algae off of the front pane of glass, but the sides I normally leave it to build up. That way they always have a good food supply regardless of when I feed them. You can also drop in some vegetables, and they'll munch it up as well. But autos are another intermediate level fish. They're very peaceful, smaller fish that are sensitive to water changes as well. So, which it all works out because I have Kui loaches, I have the Rummy-nosed tetras, and I have, here's the auto right here, autos that are pretty sensitive to water changes. So I'm already in the habit, I'm only going to do a 10 or 15% water change, and that way they'll all be a-okay. But auto is another really cool, cute looking fish that's going to help be a cleanup crew for algae, right? The other fish that I have, this is not exactly a fish, but I have a couple dwarf Mexican lobsters in here. So I actually had those in the 5-gallon, but they started to breed and there's not going to be enough room, so I moved them down here. And there's one hiding behind this piece of wood here, and there's another one somewhere else. But I have 2 dwarf Mexican lobsters, really cool fish, really active fish. They're going to be walking all over the place, scavenging for food, right? So they're really neat. Now, when you think of like a crayfish, you hear a lot of stories that they're very aggressive and they're going to eat your fish. And that's true for most crayfish. Now, the normal size crayfish, they're more aggressive and they're going to catch your fish if they can catch it, right? But the dwarf Mexican lobster is not as aggressive, and they're not that fast, right? They're pretty fast at retreating away. That means swimming backwards, but they're not fast at attacking. So if you ever see them eating a fish, more than likely it was already dead or injured. Now, the thing I would say about the dwarf Mexican lobsters, if you want to get one, is that you want to make sure that all the other fish in the tank are very peaceful. And if you have more than one dwarf Mexican lobster, make sure there's plenty of hiding places for them, because whenever it is time for them to molt their exoskeleton, they become very slow and very susceptible to attacks from other dwarf Mexican lobsters or other fish. So you want to make sure that they have adequate place to hide if you have multiple, and that the other fish in the tank are very peaceful. Otherwise, they're not going to stand a chance and they're going to die after their first or second molt, which you don't want that to happen. So that's my advice on the dwarf Mexican lobsters, but a really cool fish. That is essentially all the fish that I have in my tank, in the 20-gallon long tank. This is a dirted substrate. I have pockets of dirt capped with gravel and then capped again with sand. Really help these crypts grow and provide a lot of nutrients for any stem plants or any root type plants that I have in here. But that's all the fish, that's all the plants. That's kind of how my 20-gallon is running. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did. I hope it inspired you on some ideas for what you want to put in your 20-gallon long tank. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.